Welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast, where we will go beyond the balance sheet with our guests, not only to share from our personal experience as financial advisors of over 25 plus years, but also to learn from our guests about the issues and topics that are important to them. Our firm specializes in taking care of the financial plans for individuals and small businesses by helping our clients identify their individual goals and taking a conservative and ongoing approach to helping accomplish them. We are located in Hickory, North Carolina, and look forward to continuing to serve our clients and our community. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Hello and welcome today to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast. I'm Ryan Edwards and this is Les Stewart, and we're here today to talk about a very important topic, when your parents need you to be the adult, which is something that probably none of us growing up really wanted to be an adult, but once we get to a certain age, we certainly need to, we kind of have to take on some different roles. So,
yeah, I know. I wish I could go back in time, but I haven't figured it out how.
I know. I'd like to be my kids right now. And unfortunately, some conversations in our office, there's certainly some moments that come up in our practice from time to time where a client calls in and, they're kind of going in, checking in with their parents, and it turns out their parents have asked them a couple times about a certain bill, or, maybe there's some things around their house that's fallen by the wayside that they think they should have maybe seen that needs fixing, that they normally are on top of, or they made a mistake or got taken advantage of, and on a little sending some money someplace that they shouldn't have sent, and they need to kind of come to a realization that they may need to be a little more involved than they have been.
Yeah, and it's kind of a tough moment. It's that moment when you realize that the roles are reversed, and your parents need you to look after them, and a lot of us that's kind of tough to realize your parents aren't the strong figure in your life that have been for many of us. And so, that's a tough situation.
Right. And that's, it makes it harder on all of us. And most families arrive at that transition without a real plan in place. A 2026 study actually found that 27% of Americans have never even discussed their end-of-life wishes or have a plan of even doing so. And 42% say they wouldn't even know what to do if a family member did pass away today. So the conversation that needs to happen most often has not happened at all.
Yeah. So today, we want to talk about ways to change that statistic a little bit, and walk through some of the ways that you can start that conversation with your parents and take some of the risk that you might have in having that conversation that prevents you from having that.
Right.
So, one way that you can start that conversation is take some of that uncomfortableness off the table. But first you need to address, why aren't we having that conversation? And, one of the reasons is what's called the ostrich effect. And so a lot of times when something is uncomfortable, or especially dealing with family members, and you just don't want to deal with the drama and the uncomfortableness, and especially with your parents, you don't want to make them feel bad. So you stick your head in the sand and avoid the conversation altogether.
Right, and it runs both ways. Most adult children don't even want to, they're quietly hoping that their parents are okay, and they're going to be fine, and everything's going to be taken care of, and so they wait with those conversations and don't have them. And then at the same time, most parents, they don't want to feel scrutinized, or don't want to, maybe they're going to feel embarrassed or seem like they're losing themselves, or maybe their independence even, and so they know. What happens is really nobody brings anything up, and therefore nothing's even solved.
Yeah. So one way that you might be able to make that conversation easier is the way you frame it up. Instead of going to your parents and saying, you need to deal with this, or I can tell you're slipping, or not remembering things. Frame it in a way that turns it back on you. For example, I was sitting with my financial advisor the other day, and we were going over that we needed to get these documents or these plans lined up for our family and make it a joint, include them in that conversation. And that takes some of that criticism feel away from that conversation.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. So kind of keeping that first conversation bounded, if you will, is you don't need to talk about everything at once. Just maybe bring up a topic like, where's I know you've got maybe some of your important documents. You've probably done those. Where do you happen to keep those? We're trying to figure out where to keep ours, and bring that up as a topic. Or who's your contact at the bank? Our contact at the bank, so and so, and just bring it up in a conversation. And what happens? What happens if one of you are in the hospital and the other needs to make a call on the type of care you need? So, one conversation like that may open up the door to another, and you're not just jumping maybe in the deep end, and maybe that one question kind of uncovers some maybe more comprehensive matters, if you will.
Right. And I think also another avenue you can take is schedule a time to talk with a financial professional, an advisor, or someone that you prefer to work with that can take that, be a middleman for that, be a neutral voice, and it becomes just working through a set of items that you need to work on instead of, people sitting across the table saying you need to do this, you need to do this. Let the professional say this is what needs to happen.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, so once that door's open, one of the first places to go is to talk about those legal documents, because most families do not have what they need to have in place. And, I want to walk through three that come up most often, if you will. Let's do that right now.
Yeah, so the first one is that we see that there's the most confusion around is the power of attorney.
Yep. So a durable power of attorney basically designates someone to manage a person's financial financial and legal affairs, if you will, and if they become unable to do so. So the word durable is critical, and a standard power of attorney becomes void the moment a person loses mental capacity, which is exactly when you need it the most. A durable power of attorney stays valid even then.
Right. And another version of power of attorney is the springing power of attorney, and that is a little more complicated. It's activated when you formally are declared incapacitated or unable to carry out your duties, and that's it sometimes requires some legal work. It may require a court decision to make that activate, which can cost time that you may need to between that when it actually happens and when the power of attorney can be used. You may not have access to what you need. So, a lot of times most attorneys lean toward the durable power of attorney on that. So.
And a second document would be a healthcare proxy or potentially a healthcare power of attorney paired with an advanced directive. And the proxy, if you will, designates who's able to make medical decisions on your behalf. Or if the parent cannot, in this case, which we're talking about for our parents or your parents, these documents, they're specific when specific treatment preferences are they're in writing together. They ensure that whoever is making the decision knows both who is authorized and what the parent actually wants.
Right. And so a document a lot of people and families have never heard of is POLST is the short, but it stands for Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And basically it is a physician-signed medical order. It's not just some wishes. It's a physician-signed medical order that basically directs emergency providers. They have to follow it immediately, and it's for managing serious health conditions if you're at an advanced stage, and it's a really actionable document that must be acted upon.
Yeah. So if these documents are in place, what is going to happen is the family's going to have to petition the courts for guardianship or conservatorship to make decisions, and that's going to be costly, time-consuming, and just needs to be avoided.
Yeah.
And getting the paperwork right while a parent is healthy is just a great way to protect that whole entire situation.
Right. And another thing to note is a lot of people do have power of attorneys out there, but they had them drawn up years ago. We've seen 20 years or longer that they've had them drawn up, and they need to revisit those. Sometimes the state laws change with the way the powers of attorney are handled, and they need to be revisited and possibly updated too. Another thing is a document that we look at people needing to have is they're looking at their financial life. So it's not really a document, but knowing where things are. A lot of times, parents have been handling their business. You were growing up doing your thing and started your life, and you hadn't really paid attention to what they're doing, and they may not have wanted you to know either, for that matter. But just think of all the things that's involved in our daily lives, like insurance policies, bank accounts, investment accounts. Where's your will located? Things like that. Who is your actual estate attorney if you've got a big estate? And those things matter. And knowing where to find them in a timely manner is important. And you don't know unless you ask and probably document it.
Right. So we call that a financial inventory. Actually, in our office, we've got particular software. We really call it the asset map. And it's a single organized record of everything basically that a trusted person would want to step into and basically find out, like you mentioned, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but it is truly a one-page document that outlines where bank statements, where you bank, checking savings, any investment accounts, including retirement accounts, as you mentioned, insurance policies, long-term care, life, pension, any income coming in, any real estate that you own, the professional contacts, as you mentioned. All of that in one place can be so helpful for one's heirs, and it makes it actually helpful for your heirs as you go through kind of if the end of life situation happens and comes to that point. It makes it a whole lot easier on everyone.
Right. And, just to kind of add to that, and then I'll go on to the next thing, but I think it's helpful to have an advisor that they know you work with that may kind of be the hub of all that stuff. We've seen it happen recently in our... Yeah,
I had a meeting actually this past week with a family where the whole family came in, and we had to have that conversation.
Right.
And that inventory was at the center of the conversation. It made it very easy.
And that family member had said, go see Ryan if something ever happens to you.
Exactly. Yes.
So, another part of that, though, not just like where your stuff is, but also in today's digital world, a lot of people are doing banking and financial activities and other things that dealing with their finances and life online. And I met with a person just the other day that they don't even, their bank has no physical address. It's all online, and they do their transactions online. And how do you access those accounts if you don't know where it is and what the passwords are and that kind of thing? So that's something important to take an inventory of. How do I access their digital life too? Because you think it takes a while to go to the bank and get things done if something happens to that person. If you try to track down through a call center or something like that, it's even worse.
Right. And here's something that people don't realize is a lot of there's actually research that suggests that cognitive decline can actually start potentially in the early 50s. And many individuals, think that, it starts happening much later than that. And that may not be a dramatic decline, or it may not be necessarily obvious, but for a capacity issue, for maybe making complex decisions or reasoning financially out certain things, could potentially shift earlier in one's life than it may be for others. And therefore, the window of having those types of discussions may be shorter for some than others. So it is certainly critical to take that into account. Right.
So, kind of to wrap this part up is to do frame it in a shared exercise with your family members. You're doing it for the good of the whole family, and work on it from that angle instead of being something that's critical. We're trying to protect the family and the legacy.
Right. Exactly. So, and there's another risk we want to talk about as well, and unfortunately this is a growing financial issue and a financial crime in our country, if you will, and one of the least talked about, and that's elder financial exploitation. And that it's not necessarily, we're not talking about strangers necessarily calling with scams, though that's very real. We just had a financial workshop on that where we talked specifically about that. But according to the most recent AARP study, approximately 72% of all elder financial exploitation losses come from known perpetrators, people that the people actually knew. So obviously that's scary, but family members, caregivers, people with trusted access to potentially your parents' information are the ones that are actually causing these crimes or elder exploitation.
Yeah. So recently, $28.3 billion in losses annually. That's the average, and that's just what gets reported. A lot of times, people are so embarrassed by her family don't even realize it, that it doesn't get reported.
It'll come as no surprise that obviously the higher asset families are the more attractive targets, but precisely because there's more to take. But the warning signs are not always obvious. There may be unusual withdrawals, new names added to financial accounts, sudden changes to a will or beneficiary designation, unpaid bills despite having adequate resources. A parent who seems reluctant to talk about finances in front of a particular person.
Right. So, the making this a protective factor is really in how you structure the situation. It's not really about looking over everybody or being untrusting. It's about putting policies in place, basically, that create a system of visibility to what's happening. You don't want one single person with unchecked access to someone's finances, basically.
Right. And this is one of the reasons we encourage clients to introduce their aging parents to us directly. And when we have a relationship with them, with a parent, we can notice certain things and, a request that doesn't sound like them. Maybe a change in their behavior, if you will, a new person calling on their behalf.
Right.
We're not necessarily investigators, but oftentimes we can kind of figure out if something's, we can certainly be the first line of maybe awareness in something that's not right.
Right. So another element of this whole thing of taking care of, reversing the roles is how do we care for the person, not just financially, but, what's involved in their actual physical care. And long-term care always comes into the picture there. And so a lot of people think and believe that Medicare covers the cost of long-term care expenses. It does not cover that. What it does is covers short-term, kind of the entry point of the skilled nursing and long-term care. And so it actually covers fully for the first 20 days of a qualifying hospital stay with a daily copay of $217. And that's for and then for 21 days through 100. And then after that, it doesn't cover anything. So first 20 days, it covers it all, 21 through 100, $217 a day out of your pocket, and then nothing after 100 days.
Yeah.
So.
And it does not cover assisted living. It does not cover ongoing home care as well. And here's a number that kind of puts everything into perspective, that 70% of Americans over the age of 65 will need some form of extended care. And the average duration of that care is 3 years. So for most families, that's not a hypothetical. It's a planning gap that you may need to take into consideration and realize that you may not realize that your parents have.
Right. So a lot of people think about Medicaid, which Medicaid is the next step and we'll get into that, but it does cover extended care costs as opposed to Medicare. But it's means tested, meaning that for you to qualify for it, you have to have spent down your assets to a certain level that you're not able to pay those expenses, basically.
Right.
And there is some Medicaid planning that can be done, but it is very time sensitive that when you need to do that. And a lot of times when people realize that they need to do Medicaid planning, it's too late to do that.
And I've got, certainly one wants to protect their assets that they've worked hard for, but you're also giving up a lot of freedom and flexibility when you're pursuing that Medicaid route as well. So you need to really educate yourself on that route as well. So, but there's two realistic strategies, in preparing or looking at, strategies for those long-term care or extended care, if you will, and they are self-funding, which means treating a potential multi-year care situation needed as a portfolio liability and planning for it deliberately, such as risk transfer, which means using different types of financial products designated or designed to shift the risk over to an insurance company in many cases, such as long-term care type policies or an insurance institution. Both are legitimate approaches, but which one fits depends on your family's specific picture, their assets, their health history, and how much flexibility they need. Right. So self-funding or transferring the risk over to an institution.
Right. So when you're talking about this stuff, ignoring it is not an option. Doing the ostrich head in the sand thing is not an option. The family that has the estate planning documents in place, has done some long-term care planning, have a totally different experience than the ones that don't. And so, the earlier you can start working on that with your family, whether it's your parents or yourself, the more options you're going to have when that time comes.
Right. So if you're listening to this, there's some things that we want to make sure you have as far as key takeaways from today's conversations. The families that handle this transition the best are not necessarily the ones that or they're the ones, I should say, that actually had those uneasy conversations, and they also had them early, and got the right documents in place, and they built a financial picture, a game plan ahead of time, so that they weren't necessarily forcing the issue late in the game.
Right. And the good news with this is it's not super complicated. It's just working through it, and working through the durable power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, the advanced directives, the PULSed. How do I handle serious health conditions? Looking through the financial inventory. It takes a little work, but it's not super hard to do. But sometimes you need a little guidance, and they're all achievable. And sometimes it just is starting the conversation.
And if you're not sure where to start, that's exactly where we kind of come into play, if you will. And that's we can help facilitate those conversations. We can connect families together with the right estate professionals. We can model out care cost projections as well, and against maybe a specific financial picture. we can make sure that the plan is reasonable and actually reflects what the family wants as well.
Right. So if it's something that you think you need to tackle, which as I think we've proven most of us do, if you haven't already, reach out. We'd be glad to help you.
Certainly. We want to thank everyone for listening today. As we said, we think this was it's always a timely topic, and one that more and more as we, myself and Les, we recently turned 50 this year, and we have aging parents, and we'll be aging parents as well at some point. And there's a point in time where we need to realize that we kind of transition, and many of the clients that we work with are experiencing this. So it's a very important topic. And if you, as we just mentioned, if you have questions about it, we'd be happy to have that conversation with you or any friend or colleague that you run across. So, as always, if you can find our other podcasts on our website under the podcast code. You can find us on YouTube as well, and under Spotify and Google Podcasts. So go check out our other podcasts and like or star us and do whatever you like. But if you are a current client, thanks for watching us. And if you don't currently work with us, we do offer a complimentary financial, what we call checkup. And if you'd like to set that up, we just encourage you to call our office at 828-855-2067, and they'd be happy to look at our calendars and set something up for you. So thank you once again.
Thanks for listening.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member of FINRA, SIPC. Southeast Retirement Planners is not affiliated with LPL Financial or registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor.